Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary with a knife video for you. Today I've got a blade from CRKT and it's a really cool blade, really cool idea. This is the CRKT Jettison. Now this knife is designed by Robert Carter, who is the son of Joe Pardue, grandson of Mel Pardue, very famous knife maker, so he kind of grew up with that background. Sorry, I'm going to fail to flip it. I can get this to flip once in a while. Because of its size, it's awkward, okay? There you go. Right-handed, I can get it to work out no problem. But small knife, really cool knife, very handy utilitarian knife. I've done quite a bit of cutting with this, and it works really well so long as you don't need the extra blade length. You know, if you're opening packages or cutting cardboard or that kind of thing, you know, this is more than enough blade length. I really like the design of this. You know, when I first, it's a 3-finger knife. It's very small, but when I was first seeing, you know, the CRKT stuff coming out at SHOT Show, I was really impressed with this little knife. And so I picked one up. I've had this for quite a while now. And I will say this. I love the design. It's poorly implemented though. All right, and I'll speak to that kind of as we go along. First off, this knife could have been bigger. It would actually work really well in a larger design. If you check out, there's a new Kaiser, the Kaiser John Gray PB1 is a similar, you know, sort of look to it, but it's a larger size. Now to me, I think it's still a little too small for me, but this knife is designed to be more of a keychain knife, and that's why I picked it up. I wanted to try something small that I could drop in my pocket, you know, and in that role, this knife works really well. In fact, it works better than other knives because it does give you a full 3 fingers, which is not that bad, especially for a knife of this size. So let's go ahead and get to that size and weight stuff. So this knife is 5 1/4 inches overall, 2-inch blade, 3 1/8 inch handle. When it's folded down, it's pretty compact. I carry this a lot just loosely in my pocket. Okay, there's no pocket clip or anything like that. It does have a big extension on the titanium backspacer that can allow for going on a keychain or putting a lanyard on this, which is probably a good idea and would work well. There we go. And the weight on that is 1.36 ounces. Now to me, this is a little too much to go on a keychain. I try to keep my keychains fairly minimalist because they really, especially in the summer months where you're not wearing as much clothing, you don't have a coat that you can just drop your keys in your coat pocket, a big keychain really drives me nuts. But for those of you who, maybe you already have a giant keychain and you have a key for every building in the known world, you're not going to notice an extra 1.36 ounces. To me, that's pretty hefty for a keychain. Anyway, moving on to the specifics on this knife, or actually let's do a quick comparison first. If you're going to carry something like this, I don't think it's a bad deal. There's quite a bit by way of competition out there. I've got my Leatherman Squirt, and let me just get the blade out on that. There's the blade. You can see that on the Leatherman Squirt, the blade is considerably smaller, although, frankly, for the things you're going to use this knife for, this blade would probably do them all. You know what I mean? You're not going to, both of these are well, this is 2 inches, this is maybe more like 1.5 inches. But the reality is, these blades, if it's a big job, then you're going to need something like this, right? When you get to small blades are small blades. They're going to be limited all in the same ways, and that extra 1/4 inch or so is not going to make much difference. But what I will say is, for the stuff that they're good at, they're very, very good at opening packages, mail, cutting, you know, some light cordage, cutting cardboard up, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it works really, really well. Okay, so the blade is a very functional design, and one of the cool things that I really like about this is the design that allows for your thumb to be here. And this is how you're really going to hold the knife. There's not really that many options. It pretty much, the design forces you into this grip, but this grip works really, really well. So there's no complaint there. It is a hollow ground blade. It's 8CR13 MOV steel. So just a good quality budget steel, right? We've talked about that before. It's Chinese steel made overseas, right? So no big complaints about the blade steel, especially for the price point. It's not going to be the greatest thing in the world, but it's certainly acceptable. All right, while we're talking about this blade, it's a nice Wharncliffe blade shape, and let me zoom in so you can see things a little better. I'll zoom in maybe a little more than usual because this knife is quite small. Let's focus. Come on. There we go. So now we're in focus. You can see that Wharncliffe blade shape, the hollow grind, that nice swedge on the top. So it's a very attractive knife. I think I've got to definitely give credit where credit is due. Really nice looking knife. I love the hollow grind. So overall, the blade itself is really well done. I have no complaints at all. I do think, like I said before, this knife could work on a number of different scales. So it works well as a small knife. I think it would work really well as a large knife too. I really like the way everything kind of ties together as well. And since we're talking about the blade, this is one feature I do like on knives. They don't all have it, but when I can get it, I like it. The blade, notice how it's sort of offset toward the front. So your fingers are, you know, they're still in the way a little bit, but having the blade moved this way, the cutting edge down here, is very helpful for a utility knife like this. All right, so the blade is really good, you know, decent steel, very, very good performance, nice thin edge geometry, so it slices really well for all of those sort of utility tasks, which is what this is really designed for. Okay, now what about lockup and deployment? Well, guys, here I'm gonna be a little bit negative, maybe more than a little bit negative. The lockup is okay, and as it broke in, initially the lock stick was pretty rough, but that went away fairly quickly as the knife broke in. Come on, sorry, we're out of focus. Now, what didn't go away was this ongoing problem where, you know, you're trying to adjust the knife to get it to, I'm trying to give you a few different views here, but you're trying to adjust the knife, of course, so that it flips well and doesn't have any blade plate. And let me just tell you, you can't. Okay, so your choice is you have a knife that has pretty severe side-to-side blade play. Okay, nothing up and down. The lockup is very secure, so that's not a problem, but the side-to-side play is terrible, and it only flips moderately well at that with this much play. Now, if I loosen it off even more, I can get it to flip a little better, but the blade is flopping around in there like unbelievably bad. So with this knife, it's really, really frustrating. You basically have to pick, either you can have a flipper that doesn't flip with no blade play, or you can have a flipper that flips, but the blade play is pretty horrendous. Okay, so here's why this is so stupid. I understand it's a budget knife. I understand that you want to, you know, keep things on the cheap, but there are knives that cost the same price as this that have IKBS. Why someone at CRKT didn't say, hey, this is a flipper, we ought to put IKBS bearings in it, is totally beyond me. There's literally no reason. I know there's not a lot of space here, but those IKBS bearings are pretty small, and they could have redesigned the interface between the lock and the blade just a little bit to allow some more space. And that's part of the problem. The Teflon washers that are in here are quite small, and that exacerbates the problem, right? So, you know, think about this for a second. If you have my two hands against it and you don't want a lot of movement, is it better to have a large amount of surface area or a small amount of surface area? Obviously, bigger is better. And when you're talking about side-to-side movement, the bigger the bigger the washer, the better it's going to be. Okay, so the washers are Teflon washers, which make them already a little bit soft. And I've often said that on a lot of knives that have Teflon washers, you're going to get like a little bit of flex in the washers because there's some give to them. This, in addition to having Teflon washers, just has, you know, you just can't get it to not have blade play. So lockup and deployment, bad on both counts, okay? It doesn't flip well, and when you get it to the point where it will kind of flip, then it has blade play. So even now where it does, I've loosened it off to where it does have pretty substantial blade play. It only flips if I'm really, yeah, see, there you go, it didn't even lock up that time. So it doesn't flip well and it doesn't lock up well, which to me, you know, that's a fail. In terms of the handle, let's go to the handle next, and we'll stay zoomed in. The handle is actually very comfortable. It's a nice 3-finger grip. You can do a lot of cutting, and I have, you know, I've carried this quite a bit. I've just ignored the blade play and used it. And I will say that it's very useful. There's no question about that. Having a small knife in your pocket is handy because, you know, especially if you're carrying something larger, you can get this out and make cuts and it's not going to bother anybody. It is cool to see the titanium, although again, I would have been happy with a stainless steel frame and a knife that was put together properly. That's okay. So, handle, very comfortable. Lanyard hole is nice and big, or keychain hole, whatever you're going to use it for. I think both of those are working well. The edges are all nicely rounded. Very, very attractive stonewash finish on this. The other cool thing about this is because of the titanium, you have lots of, you could anodize this in a bunch of different colors and do some really neat things with it. So that's the other cool feature about this. All the screws are Torx construction, and I will say I have taken this knife apart to try and get it cleaned up. What I did was I cleaned everything thoroughly to try and get rid of that blade play. Sometimes that does help. In this case, it didn't make much difference. So anyway, there you go, guys. That's my take on the CRKT Jettison. Really great design, really cool looking knife. Really, a neat offering. I love the blade shape. I love the simplicity and smoothness of the handle. I love a lot of things about this knife, but you can't make a flipper only knife that doesn't flip well. And that's where this knife really, really falls down. So there you go, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let me zoom out. Yeah, hope you enjoyed the video, and we will talk to you later.